Welcome to the special Fringe meeting today about caries. And we're honored, Martin and I are, that you would take time to join us and talk about your work. And I'm just delighted to meet people that I've been talking to for years and to have this conversation. So my personal goal here is for us to make some new friends, to share our work and our passion for conquering this disease that is affecting so many billions of people on planet Earth. Perhaps create some collaborations going forward. And what I don't want this meeting to do is be a format to promote individual ideas, agendas, or products, although it's perfectly okay to talk about those sort of things. This meeting is not sponsored by anybody, so thank you for coming here on your own expense. And we paid for the room, and that's about all there is to it. So Martin has been kind enough to be sort of the MC of this meeting, and he's going to tell you about the flow of events throughout the day.
Okay.
And so I will again say thank you and turn it over to
14
Martin.
presentations, no more than 10 minutes, and each person will say whatever they want about this subject. So we don't know what you're going to say, but we hope it will be, and think it will be stimulating. Then we will have a breakout session. There will be a rest period in the middle. So then we'll have a breakout session with people having small group discussions about whatever area they're interested in that we listed. And then we will have lunch served here, so you don't get out. And then we will have a general discussion, which can last up to 2 hours. We'll have a report from the breakout sessions, and we'll have a long discussion. We hope very fruitful discussion, a heartfelt, open discussion. And then we will try to summarize what we've learned and what we think we might do, and then that will be it. The restroom is out that door past the elevators. That's 10 minutes. And then there's plenty of time for those who are not presenting something to have their say. We want to have as much discussion as possible. So that's the general outline of what's going to happen. And now I'm going to. This is a Scottish Terrier that belongs to our family. I won't tell you any more about him, other than his name is Lord Bentley. But you can ask me later if you want. But he represents Scottish McIntyre. I'm a McIntyre. Please listen with open minds and hearts to what each of us has to say, and then discuss how to move forward. It should be an embarrassment to the dental profession that caries is rare in some populations and rampant in others. Children of the haves usually don't get caries, even if they avoid the dentist. And children of the have-nots usually don't go to the dentist until they have a toothache. There are an estimated 2.4 billion children and adults who have untreated lesions, and many more with untreated disease. The question is, how do we control at the lowest cost for the largest, control caries at the lowest cost for the largest number of people? The present standard of care is surgical excision, followed by prosthetic replacement. A very expensive, highly skilled drill and fill protocol. Most people in the world don't have access to this treatment, and it doesn't control, arrest, or cure caries. Fortunately, there are non-surgical alternatives, but unfortunately, they aren't taught in dental schools because their outcomes are considered to be second-class dentistry. More importantly, there is no monetary incentive to study or use these methods. They are on the fringe of dental practice when they should be center stage. that's my cue for a song from the musical South Pacific called You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. You've got to be taught to rue the day you failed to remove all the decay. You've got to be taught this day by day. You've got to be carefully taught. All dental students are carefully taught, day by day, to fear leaving the slightest speck of decay. If they do, they will fail the licensing exam. As long as this is true and medical alternatives don't remove the decay, there is an impasse. In 1957, before most of you were born, I was taught that G.B. Black said we should remove all decay. If I had gone to the library, I would have learned that in 1908 he said something quite different about treating children with caries. I quote, and I left a sheet for you to read, but I will try to be Dr. G.B. Black. Leave the decay material in the dentin where it is. Do not disturb it or attempt to remove it. The removal of this is particularly painful to the child. If some decay is left and some dentin is exposed, it should be treated with silver nitrate. The object of this treatment is to fill the part of the dentin softened by decay with the insoluble salt of silver, and incidentally, to destroy the organisms in it. Generally, decay is effectively stopped by this treatment, and the teeth, although mutilated and out of shape, will be useful to the time of their shedding. We may, if decay is again starting up in some part of the surface that had been treated in this way, treat it again, and stop it again, and again if necessary. His words are still true, but unfortunately the lesson was lost with the discovery of Novocaine and fluoride. There is no reason for anyone to suffer from caries. We already know how to achieve what matters most to our patients. No toothaches, no injections, no extractions. Then why aren't we doing it? Sadly, because there is a strong resistance to change, especially if the change questions the legitimacy of what we were carefully taught and appears to threaten our livelihood. Yet, there is hope for change without convincing dentists or dental organizations. The tipping point for change is a rapidly diminishing pool of aging, full-pay patients who still need the standard surgical protocol. The income gap has been temporarily filled with cosmetic dentistry for the haves who can pay cash. However, this is insufficient in the long run. The new income stream will come from the have-nots, who will be the only ones left with most of the lesions. Medical management of caries is the only option, and it doesn't require removal of decay. But new dentists with large education debts may have a strong economic incentive to seek less expensive, non-surgical alternatives that require far less capital investment and at the same time improves their patients' health at a low fee and a profitable income. Change is inevitable. The silent death knell for the surgical protocol came in 1955 when fluoridated toothpaste was introduced and the "look ma, no cavities" generation began. In 1965, fluoridated toothpaste were 50% of the market, and now they are almost 100% of children's toothpaste. The first wave of users are now in their 50s, like my children. And the prime age for expensive treatments that have always been the main support for high overhead dental offices. Fluoridated toothpaste has allowed many of these early adopters to be caries-free, like my children. And every year the number will increase. We are running out of the haves who need and can afford surgical protocol, and we are left with the have-nots who need it but can't afford it. To save the day, a heroine appears center stage. Back to my musical. She is the alternative caries protocol, who is child-friendly, effective, efficient, profitable, and can replace the income from the vanishing high compensation surgical treatments with equal or better income from the high volume, low compensation medical treatments. With this scenario in mind, I propose the following objectives for any caries management protocol. Improves dental health. Safe, effective, painless, simple, efficient, low cost, and more profitable than surgical protocol. These objectives can be met with existing technologies that don't require going back to school. It only requires fulfilling the professional obligations to do no harm, treat anyone in need, and improve their health. Also, dentists must swallow hard and leave the decay in the dentin where it is. Once the objectives are agreed, medical management of caries will be proven to be more productive than surgical protocol and will create happier, healthier patients. This is especially true for people living in isolated areas of the world, where until now the only option has been care by altruistic dentists volunteering their time to relieve suffering on annual trips to extract hopeless teeth. If some of their time were devoted to a medical protocol, then each year there would be fewer toothaches and fewer teeth to extract. The cost of the medical alternative is low and could be much lower and more productive if it were applied on-site by mid-level providers. In summary, there are worthy objectives, methods, and materials for the medical management of caries that aren't part of standard practice because dentists and dental organizations have resisted adding them. When we accept control of disease as the endpoint, and when providers are compensated for our health outcomes, then what Dr. Black recommended in 1908 will be recognized as far superior to letting teeth rot so they are painful abscesses, followed by frightening emergency extractions, preventable treatments under general anesthesia, the operating room, and then, of course, one recent notorious event where the child died for lack of care. A 180-degree shift from surgical to medical management can't happen quickly because a large supply of children with untreated caries will become the major pool of patients and source of income. Unfortunately, this shift is more likely to happen because of economic imperatives of the marketplace than by rational discussion. But let's try the latter anyway, knowing we have the prevailing wind at our back. This meeting is already successful simply because it exists and you're here. A meaningful success will require agreement on specific measurable objectives for medical management of caries. Once this is accomplished, then studies can measure success on criterion other than retention rates. Then and only then will toothaches, injections, fillings, abscesses, extractions, space maintainers, root crowns, root canal treatments, bridges, implants, and false teeth become the subject of a course in dental history. Thank you. Applause is not necessary. Each one of us has this, whatever we want to say.
Thank you, Martin. Martin's been a big inspiration for me in all the work he's done throughout his career. A couple of things I forgot to mention. Most of us are going to get to know each other during the discussion groups, which will occupy most of this time. And so I would hold off on questions until the discussion group. And also, we're recording this event. Everyone has given consent. This meeting will be available on our website for anyone to look at. So if there's anything you don't want to say to the world, don't say it here. And it's also important to use the mic so that the recording is done well. So if you're up here speaking, please keep the mic right next to your mouth. And we have another mic which will go around in the discussion groups. And so please continue to use the mic. Two people, most of us are dentists, scientists, and public health. We have a couple of people that are not in that category that I'd like to introduce. Number one is Dr. Karen Sokol Gutierrez. Karen, would you stand up? Karen is a pediatrician with UC California, Berkeley School of Public Health. I met her by watching her frontline story about the extreme rates of dental caries in El Salvador. We've been collaborating for some time now, remarkably inspiring person. Thank you for coming. She didn't come to the IADR meeting, by the way. She came to this meeting. Thank you for that. And Helene, I'm going to let you pronounce your last name. Okay, is a fourth-year dental student from UC San Francisco and is on the committee representing the student body evaluating silver nitrate in the use of the medical management of caries at that university. So the word's getting out. I'm very happy to hear that. So congratulations and welcome once again. So I'm going to go into my 10 minutes here. And the first disclaimer is that I took this beautiful image right off the cover of the ODA magazine without their permission for their annual meeting. But it's so wonderful showing the past and the future together and how we're using what we know, and what we're going to know to take us into the future. So I am the owner of a general dental practice. I'm the dental director of Oral Health Outreach, which is an advocacy program and education organization. And I'm a founding partner in Nodicay, which is a medical device entity, and the editor of Medical Management of Caries Library, where all of our electronic information is located. This is an image of a tooth that was extracted less than 2 weeks ago by John Frascella, who's going to present via video in Central Oregon on an 8-year-old child. It's a 6-year molar on an 8-year-old child that had to be extracted because of extreme tooth decay. This is just sad that this is happening in the world today. And what we know is that this medicine, applied at the right time, could have avoided that. We all know about the Diamante driver. Martin alluded to this case. Very sad case, and it is just incredible to me that this could have been prevented if the right medical intervention had occurred at the right time. So this is serious business. I'm not here to tell you about my story. Many of you know the story, and I don't want to I'm getting tired of telling it, okay? And if you don't know it, all right, you can read this paper in the CDA journal, which is on our electronic library, which talks about the learning curve that happened in my practice, and then this report in the Lund report, this paper in the Lund report, Medical Management Caries Paradigm Shift. It's available. That's available to you if you want to know my story. I want to talk about Ecuador. We're doing a project right now that I'm extremely excited about that I want to share with you. The first story is that the Ecuador Ministry of Health reached out to us, probably by stumbling across the MMC library and learning some information that we were doing something differently. And they said, we want to learn what you're doing. And the reason for that is because 90% of our school children have tooth decay. And 50% of our children have pain. Astonishing. And we have to do something differently. So in January, these two dentists from the Ministry of Health in Ecuador flew to Portland, Oregon, and spent 3 days with us, treating patients, going through the MMC library materials, and learning about the medical management of caries. Astonishingly, one of the dentists, Dr. Saneda here, had actually used silver nitrate 30 years ago when she got out of dental school. She had heard about it and tried it, but didn't know how to use it, but had an open mind to the medical management of caries. So we then moved forward with the idea of creating a pilot project in Ecuador to validate what they had learned during their visit to us. And a very comprehensive pilot program was designed. The author is Kelly Matthews, a dental hygienist in Oregon, who helped us put this together. The Ministry of Health contributed in this, and so we had a very mature pilot program design. January 15th, the pilot occurred in Ibarra, Ecuador, about an hour and a half north of Quito. This is the population. There were 165 primary school children, ages approximately 4 to 14. There was a special needs school in Ibarra where they had children with all sorts of different physical and mental disabilities that had the terrible access to care. And then just recently, a preschool of children under 4 years of age were included in this pilot. Number one is we obtained consents from parents, schools, and the government to conduct this pilot. This is an image of the school, the Galapagos School, about 45 minutes outside of Ibarra. This is what the classroom looked like before we reconverted into a dental MASH unit, which I'll show you in a minute. This is an image from the special needs school where children were treated. I want to digress for just a moment and mention that in 2010, the Pan American Health Organization initiated a program in Ecuador called Caries Free Communities. And at that time, the dentists and the Ministry of Health initiated what they felt was the best knowledge about reducing dental decay in Ecuador. And so this is Dr. Seneda talking back in 2010 to the community. And my point here is that our pilot has been integrated into that existing program. So instead of being a sort of medical mission to Ecuador, like many organizations do, this is embedded inside of the Ministry of Health program. What did they do there? Every child received a comprehensive oral examination with a dentist. All abscessed teeth were extracted. And of the 165 kids, about 10 had frank, obvious abscesses, and they needed to go over to the corner and get the tooth pulled, and that's what happened. All children receive prevention education and toothbrushing, although they get that every day as part of the Caries Free Communities program. All active caries lesions were treated 3 times with silver nitrate and fluoride varnish over 2 weeks. So every single cavity was treated 3 times using that protocol. And then any adverse events and early outcomes were gathered just days ago on March 3rd. These are some images of that activity. These slides show what I call technology transfer. So Tiffany is a team member in our clinic in Oregon who went to Ecuador and worked with Seneda and the other dentists that came to visit us. And so Tiffany helped ensure that the methodology, the use of the technology, everything that was being done was very carefully transferred to the Ecuadorian dentists. And this image shows now Tiffany assisting Dr. Seneda in her efforts. There were 8 other Ministry of Health dentists that participated in this pilot, and all were trained in a similar way. All were using the pilot program documentation as they were trained. Here's some great MASH unit images. You can see that the dental, or the school desks were turned into dental chairs and tabletops for treatment. Digital images were taken of every arch of every child that was treated. So we'll now have before and after photographic images, as well as documentation in paper format of what happened. What are we measuring? We want to know, and I want to give a special thanks to Dr. Karen, who I've been talking with on and off over the past year about this project, and she's provided a lot of feedback on how to improve this pilot. And so a lot of the data that we're going to be pulling out comes from my interaction with her, and I can't thank you enough. And the one that I wouldn't have thought of is how many kids are in pain. Well, in Ecuador, half the kids are in pain every day. So that became one of the metrics, mouth pain. She also suggested that we start looking at general nutrition. So we did height and weight. Right here, we're measuring height and weight on every child at baseline. Okay? Then there's a whole series of questions on oral health quality of life that is part of this before we did anything. Then we did a complete dental diagnosis. All active caries are going to be measured as going from active to inactive. And we're going to do that at 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months on over 1,000 teeth. This is a huge data set, really a huge data set. And then we're also going to be able to look at academic performance over this period of time. We have a lot of data, okay, collected and a lot coming, and we'll be analyzing it. So I don't have all of the answers, okay, but I can tell you what's happening right now. This is in Spanish, and I'm going to try and translate it for you as it goes. This is the principle of the Galapagos School outside of Ibarra. She's going to be talking about how she feels about the pilot in her school. This is her daughter who was treated, and I think it's going to be marvelous outcome. Go ahead and run the video.
Sí, señor.
Aquí, ahí.
Aquí estamos con la señora directora de la escuela
The principal
Galápagos de
and her daughter.
Esparta, con Nayeli, que le hicimos el tratamiento 3 veces
Did 3
de
treatments.
las caries, y ahora queremos preguntarle a la mamá
Ask
y
a
señora
question.
directora de la escuela cómo le ha ido a la niña con el tratamiento.
Porque ya igual se tenía unas manitas que me molestaban.
So she used to have teeth that bothered her
No
every
tiene
day.
dolor. Eso es lo importante.
Qué
que
bueno.
Now they don't hurt.
significa que la carie ya ha sido erradicada.
Veámosle un ratito, a ver, abre la boquita.
El
solo.
tratamiento
Not a really good exam, but
No te has dolido los dientes, ¿no?
are your teeth hurting? Are your teeth hurting?
¿Quién hace la
No.
mano al que ya no le duelen
Okay.
los dientes?
How many people's teeth don't hurt anymore?
¿Quién-
Hacen la mano.
Raise your
Eso.
hand if your teeth don't hurt. So it's just amazing that going back, at 1 month, we're finding this metric that nobody's complaining of tooth pain. It's great. Okay, so what's coming next? I'd like to give thanks to my father, Ralph, who is a general dentist, inspired me to go into dentistry, and went to the University of Washington, where I was born 60 years ago, and who used silver nitrate when he got out of dental school and then forgot about it. Interesting story. And then my son Marcus, who's been an important part of this journey, provides the scientific and the business side of what we're doing. So, what's happening next in our agenda? We are working to take the pilot in Ecuador to multiple countries around the world. These are the countries that we're looking at.
Don't forget to mention Jim, our other family member.
Thank you. Jim, raise your hand. I have my brother Jim, also a dentist, here with us today. He wasn't there for the photo op, but also has used silver nitrate. So you can ask him some questions about it. So we're a dental family. We would like to be able to reproduce the outcome that is happening in Ecuador in multiple locations, and we're partnering with an NGO to make this happen, and it will happen during this coming year. No needles, no drills, no pain, just smiles. When I saw this happening in my practice, it was a miracle. And I knew that I could never go back. And if I'm going to thank anyone for that insight, it is Peter Milgore, who's here with us today. Who I was in an audience 15 years ago when he said, there's this stuff not available in America called silver fluoride, and it stops caries. I'd never heard of it. And Mike Shirtcliffe, I don't know, Mike's here, we were sitting next to each other, there's Mike, we're sitting next to each other and go, what's that? Everything we're doing doesn't work. And so that began this whole journey to discover. And I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of papers. I've dug through old archives. Yesterday, we were at the Percy Howe archives looking at what he was doing in 1917. Okay? All of this is available on the MMC library. So we have hundreds of papers, and Paige Caulfield is here today with us. And Paige, I thank you for inspiring me to make that library. You said, Steve, put it all in one place. And my son Marcus is the one who did it. This meeting will post at that library. If we can do this for one child, and I know that we can, we've done it for hundreds, if not thousands of children in our practice. We can do it for a family. We've eliminated caries in families in our practice. Then we can go to a school, we can go to a city, we can go to a province, we can go to a country, and ultimately, I believe we can do this for the whole world. There is no reason, if we can do it for one person, that we can't do it for the whole world. We just have to figure out how to do that. Since I'm from Oregon, just do it. So once again, thank you, Martin and I, for your being here.
Yeah, so Steve has asked me to tell my story. My story is that I am a pediatric dentist. I've been involved in public health for as long as I've had a career. in dentistry. As soon as I got out of dental school, I became the director of a free clinic for underprivileged children for the city of Bangor, Maine. I was the city dentist for 32 years. And I treated teeth in children in a conventional way, and doing stainless steel crowns and composite restorations mostly. And we had fluoride mouth rinse programs, and we had puppet shows, and millions of yards of floss, and we tried to arrest tooth decay that way. We tried to stop tooth decay from growing in our community. It was when I first entered in this community, I met people who were in their 20s who told me that their graduation present from high school was a set of dentures, and that was the community standard. I think that was the standard graduation present within that community when I moved into it in 1974. So then I retired after 32 years of treating teeth in conventional ways, and I came to realize that I really hadn't even put a dent in the amount of tooth decay in that community. Even though I had fluoridated the community, I was responsible for fluoridating that community and many other communities in Maine, and starting toothbrush programs and fluoride mouth rinse programs, and you name it, we had it. We were in 14 different elementary and high schools and daycare centers for 32 years. And again, I don't really think I put much of a dent in the caries rate in that community. So then I thought I'd retire and come to Oregon, but when I came to Oregon, I found myself being approached by people saying, hey, you know how to run public health clinics. So long story short, I ended up opening 3 federally qualified health center dental clinics in Frontier, Oregon, not rural Oregon. It was so far out where I was in Oregon that it's called the Frontier, federally qualified as a frontier area. There's less than 1/2 of a person per square mile in Wheeler County, Oregon, where I set up 3 federally qualified health centers. I saw so much decay there that I didn't quite know what to do. How was I going to eliminate the problem by conventional means? Well, it wasn't going to be possible. So we centered our federally qualified health centers in the schoolyards, so they're school-based health centers. And I appealed to the community members and to the parents in the community to allow me to go into the schools and grab their children from the classrooms and treat their decay. It was at that time that a colleague with whom I was working, also a pediatric dentist like myself, introduced me to silver-diamine fluoride. So I started using silver-diamine fluoride to see if indeed I could arrest decay, and I found that I could. And I was applying silver-diamine fluoride, 38% silver-diamine fluoride, and fluoride varnish on teeth, and watching the brown decay turn black and stop. And I said, wow, I'm stopping decay. This is quite remarkable. But I've got to be able to do more than that, because I had frank cavitation. I had cavities that, although the decay was arrested at on the cavity walls and at the floor of that lesion, there was still cavitation into which food was going. So I wanted to stop the food from getting compressed into that cavitation. So I said, well, I wonder if I could apply something on top of this. And it came to my awareness that perhaps glass ionomer would work, because I knew glass ionomer released fluoride, and maybe a release of fluoride would work synergistically with the silver-diamine fluoride. Well, it was about that time that I met Steve Duffin, and Steve introduced me to silver nitrate. Well, he kind of reintroduced me to silver nitrate because my dad had treated teeth in my mouth with silver nitrate back in the 50s. He treated some teeth that where the decay was arrested. In fact, I had these little black spots in between my teeth, where my father did that when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and those teeth have never had to be restored. And he was using the very same brown bottle that Steve gave me the first time I met him. Steve gave me this bottle. I looked at it and I said, oh my gosh, that's the same bottle my father had on a shelf in his dental office in 1950. So I said, well, all right, I'll try it. So I started using 50%, and I'll emphasize that again, 50%, not 25%, silver nitrate, and found it to be just as effective as 38% silver diamine fluoride. And it was more readily available. I didn't have to get it from Japan. There were people who were criticizing me because I was getting the silver diamine fluoride from Japan, telling me that that was illegal. I appealed to the FDA to go ahead and put me in jail. They chose not to arrest me, therefore it wasn't illegal. So that was all a bunch of smoke and mirrors. Didn't matter. I had something that was less expensive and more readily available, 50% silver nitrate, directly available from Gordon Labs in Upper Darby, PA. So I started getting that and using it and putting glass ionomer on top of it. Now remember, glass ionomer is hydrophilic. Composite is hydrophobic. Placing glass ionomers has to be done in the presence of water, or the glass ionomer will not polymerize. It's a very important point. So here I am drying saliva, isolating the tooth, drying the saliva out of the decay. So think of the decay in dentin as being a sponge. That sponge is saturated with saliva. Now we're going to isolate the tooth, and with air, we're going to dry the saliva. We're going to dry the sponge. Let's resaturate the sponge. Fully saturate it. Let it soak it in. What is soaking in? 50% of what is soaking in is silver ions. The other 50% is H2O, which is needed for the polymerization of the glass ionomer. So I use a glass ionomer that I am very specific about this. I have used resin-modified glass ionomers. I have used all kinds of different products, different kinds of glass ionomers. The product that I found that would bond without excavation of decay to the saturated, decayed dentin was Fuji 2. Light Cure. Why Light Cure? Because I'm a pediatric dentist. I don't have time. I trade children their good behavior for my speed. I don't have time to screw around. So I use something that works fast and that bonds. What works fast and bonds is Fuji 2. Have I tried other glass ionomers? You bet. Have I tried my resin? I've tried them all. If you out there would like to try something else, have at it. But I bet you anything I've already used it, and I bet you anything it doesn't work. This is what works. So I put it in, and I smush it. And after I smushed it with a gloved thumb or finger or whatever, I smush it. I wet it first, so it smushes down, doesn't adhere to the glove. I smush it. It's that simple. Wonderful instrument. It's always with me. Don't have to go to a kit for it. It's right on my hand. I smush it. Then I take any bonding agent. I happen to use Excite because that's what I use for my composite restorations. And I take a fuzzy tip applicator and I put that on there, and then I light cure it. Now remember, Fuji 2 is both light cure and sets on its own. So it's dual cure, okay? Fuji tells us we need a coating over Fuji 2 for 24 to 48 hours because that's how long the self-curing polymerization takes. Even if you light cure it, it still takes 24 to 48 hours to fully polymerize. We need to protect it from the saliva for 24 to 48 hours. The best way to protect it is with a bonding agent. Can we use other things? Sure. Fuji has a product called Fujiko. I don't use Fujiko. You know why? Because it's sticky. I don't want anything sticky. I want everything to be smooth and like like oily. I want it to be slick. So when I put it on there, it's slick. It doesn't stick to anything. Why don't I want it to be sticky? Because I don't want to pull it out. I'm not using phosphoric acid. I'm not bonding. I'm using what natural bonding that glass ionomer has for it to stick. Polymerize it with a light, coat the whole thing with fluoride varnish. Why coat it with fluoride varnish? You just sealed silver nitrate inside a tooth with glass ionomer that is releasing through its dissolution. Remember, glass ionomers don't wear, they dissolve. They dissolve in saliva over time. As it dissolves, it releases the fluoride. So the fluoride is working with the silver nitrate to arrest the decay. Why do I need fluoride varnish to cover over it? Because silver nitrate tastes terrible. If you put it in your mouth, I'm sure you will gag. So I don't want the child to taste any additional silver nitrate that might be in and around the tooth or on the gum tissue or whatever, and I'm done. Kid walks out, he says, yeah, tastes kind of like bubble gum. Thanks, Dr. John. Out the door. So why do I do this? I do this because I make the assumption that 99% of the kids I see in public health, I'm never going to see again. It's no different me working in Frontier, Oregon, than me being dropped into sub-Saharan Africa from a helicopter. I'm going to treat those children once, and then I'm going to leave because I don't live in sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm never going to see them again. So I have to do as much as I can in one appointment. What is that appointment? The exam appointment? Yes. You mean you're going to do definitive treatment and treat every single tooth in the mouth at the exam appointment? But you need to take x-rays and you need to apply fluoride and you need to do a treatment plan. Yeah, I'll do all those things. That's real fast. And I'm going to treat every single tooth in their mouth. Now, how about the kid that you know is going to come back? Or the kid that's well-behaved enough to get a shot and all of that stuff? Well, that's all fine and good. Are we talking about a patient that's got 1 caries? I don't treat patients like that, do you? Well, maybe you do. Then that's your world. My world is seeing patients who have caries in every single quadrant. So should I do what I learned in dental school? Treat 1 quadrant at a time? Well, if I treat 1 quadrant and then I have to say, well, Mrs. Smith, I'm not able to treat the second quadrant for 4 weeks or maybe 6 weeks because that's how far we are out. And she goes, well, Dr. John, we can't come in 6 weeks. Our family's going on vacation. Oh, gosh, then it's going to be 12 weeks before I get to quadrant number 2. How about quadrant number 3 and quadrant number 4? Those teeth are continuing to decay, and we're going to lose those teeth. So what do? I treat all the teeth at once. I treat them at once and put the dang fire out because I don't really believe in the standard of care that we have of treating 1 tooth or even 1 quadrant at a time. You know, let me throw this out at you hypothetically. I don't know if you've ever been involved with Mission of Mercy, but let's do a Mission of Mercy together, okay? And we'll go to your whatever state you're from, your state dental society, and you got this Mission of Mercy thing going, and you got all these chairs lined up, and all these people are going to, homeless people, and people that really need our care. And we got all these dentists that want to really do some good, and they're going to treat 1 tooth at a time. So how about if I come in and bust the party? How about if I set up a chair over here and I'm going to put up a sign and it's going to say, would you like to have 1 tooth at a time treated, or would you like to have all the teeth that need to be treated in your mouth treated now in 1 appointment, painlessly, without needles and without drills? Well, those people are going to wait in line and be treated by you over there in conventional means, and then they're going to look over here and they're going to be running out of time and they're going to say, hey, I'll try this. Which is the best way for us to treat people in need? 1 tooth at a time? 1 quadrant at a time? 1 injection? 1 drill at a time? Or treat them all at once and put the fire out? And then later, if there's time, if the behavior of the child allows, if they have enough money, we can go back to conventional means. So I'm not taking anything out of my toolkit. I will show you some of the very best stainless steel crowns you've ever seen because I've done 40 years of the dang things. I can do them impeccably, and I can do composites impeccably. I'm just adding something to the toolkit. I'm adding silver nitrate, which was there in the first place, but taken out when? In 1950. Why? Because we thought if we fluoridated communities, we would eradicate tooth decay from one end of this country to the other. And you know what? We didn't. It didn't work. Not that fluoridating communities is a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. But I know that it doesn't take care of the caries crisis that is inherently there then and even more so now. So we need something more. And that extra thing is something that was there originally that we once took out, open the toolkit, put it back in, end of story.
You like wine?
Oh,
Everybody does, isn't it?
just tell them who you are.
Jo Franke in Netherlands, Nijmegen. Very difficult to pronounce.
Artist.
Don't have to do it. But you do like wine, isn't it?
Yes.
You do make a selection, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, that's top, isn't it? So it goes by the grapes, it goes by the composition of the soil, where you get good wine and you get bad wine. The same is with Glacianos. You get good Glacianos, you get bad Glacianos. But if you want to have a good wine, you do have to follow the way that is needed to get to that good wine. If you deviate from it, your potentially good wine ends up in another category. If you use the Glacianer, and I've not completely followed the guy, was very enthusiastic at a certain moment. And if you just say slick with Glacianer, you're bound to have an inferior, a bad tasting wine. Have I made my point, or do I have to go on? No, thank you. Second thing, Glacianos is a material that has a primary bonding between ions. It's different from the composite resin, where you first have to demineralize your dentin and enamel. That will create retention niches, and then you get your primer and bonding and your composite on it. The Glacianer has a bonding. That means that calcium phosphates from both sides will leave, perhaps at the same time. One leave from the Glacianer platform and the other one from the dentin or an enamel platform. And then they meet halfway in a hyper-mineralized area. Because that's where the concentration of voltage is very high. If you put that under acidic test, that part where these ions meet, that is the most acid resistant one. It's very strong. How will ions, calcium, the phosphate ones, leave the dentin and enamel if there's a boundary? Get my point? Have to say more? Then we end up with a potentially adhesive material that has been taken, that has the possibility for it to be an adhesive material taken away. If you put a boundary there. If you use a drill, you have a smear layer. If you use hand instruments, we leave a smear layer behind. And in order for the Glacianer to work well, you have to remove that smear layer. If you move another layer in there, and put that Glacianer on top, we take away one of the very nice characteristics of the Glacianer. It's bonding. And then we come back to retention, niches, whatever, and then it may stick. And if the cavity has the pear shape, it will not fall out. But if you put a sloppy Glacianer on top, it suddenly wears and dissolves. But we want good wines. We don't want the bad bogus wine where you get a headache next morning. We don't want that. So we go for the good material and don't mix with the Glacianers in terms that I think I can do it better if there is no research backing it up. How many minutes have I?
Oh, you're still fine.
No, that's my comment to the gentleman. I like what you said, man, very enthusiastic. But I still think that we do have to follow let's say, more than NS1 studies. Am I make my,
Yes.
you know, yes?
My only recommendation is, rather than respond to the previous, tell us what you are doing now and what you hope to do in the future.
How all of us, why haven't we had the last primary cavitated lesion perhaps done, I don't know, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, depending how old you are, years ago? What was the main reason? In all of us. I had one was replaced after 50.
An explorer stick.
Sporting. But what causes that you most probably haven't been gone to the dentist to have a primary carious lesion to repair? Maybe a secondary carious is possible, or break of a filling, yes, it's possible. But for primary, when was the last time? Ages ago. What has helped you, us all, to get to that stage that we will see the dentist at the bar, perhaps, to have a drink? I like wine, I like beer also. Why is that? What is the reason for that?
12 crowns.
We have empowered ourselves thereafter. We know what we should and should not do. Do we? We know what we should and should not do. That empowerment should also go to the people in the outreach. And if you're there for one day, you cannot. If there's so many people with so many cavities, like you've experienced in SA, it's very difficult, but we have to empower those people, those young kids, the families. Then they carry it out, then they are their own master. Because there are too many. They're not 5 kids. They're not 5 adolescents. They're 5 million or 5 billion, no, wrong. Yeah. There are too many. And we cannot do it with all the best intentions that we have. We need to have more hands. And the hands are the hands of the people that have cavities. Those are the hands that we need to use. Those are the that extend our extension of care, of access to care. That's what's needed. And the silver diamond is very good in, and I would say that now, because the last time when we talked was it in Hong Kong 3-4 years ago, I was a bit skeptical when we sat at the table and talked about it. But it is when you leave the cavity open, because the tooth, the primary tooth, will exfoliate, and then you stop the carious progression. But at the same time, teach that child to keep that cavity free. And when you put the silver layer in it, you increase the chance for a reduction in sepsis and abscess and so forth. We've done studies where we didn't do it. We've studies where we opened cavities, make them cleansable, and taught the kids to clean. They did after 3.5 years. There was no difference in healthy primary teeth survival, exfoliation, in comparison to a full amalgam and a full ART. Empower them, because we cannot, the cavities occur so fast, we cannot go, not even in one or not even in too many. We ourselves, I think, I don't know you all, but we have not developed carious lesions because we know what to do. Keep the plague away. I've not spoken about art. It's not. That's later.
Okay, I'm just gonna tell them who you are. That's Joe Franken, with Dr. Pilot in Netherlands, developed the ART, atraumatic restorative treatment protocol, which he did in Zimbabwe, they did in Malaysia, it's been done in Brazil and other places. So that's why he's on the program, because when I was in Saudi Arabia in 1984, he was in Zimbabwe, and I contacted him somehow and said, you know, this is what I'm doing, what are you doing? So this is before the internet, before email, and he was very kind to critique what I was doing, and this is the first time we've met, even though we corresponded and know each other for all these years. So now it's Dr. Richard Niederman. You might, I'm not introducing you, you're from.
So I,
Right here.
What?
10 minutes.
my name is Rick Niederman. I'm from New York University College of Dentistry. So I'm a little hard of hearing, and I couldn't hear you in the back. Can you hear me with this?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah,
great.
thank you.
So if we could go up. And can you guys see this?
Yes.
Here it comes.
Here's the clicker for you.
It's this one. This light here.
If you can figure that out, it'll be a miracle.
Okay, I'm just going to keep going.
We may have to just deal with it.
And there we go. All right. So this is the problem as I see it. This data from the Healthy People.
You need to stand on this side for the
Uh,
report. I'm sorry.
All right. Sorry. I'm used to walking around. The y-axis is a percentage of kids with untreated decay in the United States, and the x-axis are 5-year increments from 1985 to 2015. So essentially over that 20-year period from 1990 to 2010, more or less, there, on average, there's 30% of U.S. kids have untreated decay. And for Native Americans, American Indians, it's almost 60%. Medicaid, minorities, rural are in between. And that has not changed over that 20-year period. Our goal in 1990 was to move down to 20%. In 2000, it was to move to 21%. And in 2010, it was to move the goal from 30% down to 26%. So over that same 20-year period, we spent in 1990 $1 billion a year to treat Medicaid kids, and in 2010 we spent $7 billion. We also, over that 20-year period, trained 30% more dentists and 60% more hygienists. So what we got for all that was a change in our goals. That's what the U.S. got for that 20-year period. So that's what I see our problem is. We're doing the same thing we've been doing, and we're training our students to do the same thing. So this is what I think could be if we did things differently. Sorry. What do I think the conflicting paradigms are? And it's that we treat comprehensive care in schools. That's what we teach at NYU, and that's what I learned, and it's based on a 19th century model. We could be doing comprehensive prevention. I don't think that NYU, Paige, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have any guidelines or requirements to do comprehensive prevention, and we certainly don't speak to a 21st century model of care. So I'm going to share with you very briefly what we did in Massachusetts. Before I came to New York, I'm going to show you our first 6 schools. We grew the program to 55 schools, and we have programs now in Maine, New Hampshire, Kansas, Colorado, and Hawaii. So essentially, we generated a school-based program. So this started in 2003. We went into schools with a van and portable equipment. The only thing we needed electricity for was glass ionomer. We gave kids toothpaste and toothbrushes. We gave oral hygiene instruction. We did fluoride varnish, and we did glass ionomer classic sealants. And, you know, please forgive me, I'm calling these therapeutic sealants. And I started out by calling them temporary restorations because that's what hygienists were allowed to do in Massachusetts. So I did exams, hygienists were licensed. Actually, in Massachusetts, dental assistants can do temporary restorations. We had hygienists doing it. And we developed an electronic dental record which we programmed information into. So I did the diagnosis, the treatment plan came up automatically, and then the hygienist would do the treatment. This is a detail. Each of these circles is one school. Again, this is a y-axis, is the same that I showed you before. These numerical increments are 6 months, so we went in the fall and the spring. Each of these circles is a school of about 200, and we drove, when we started, this is the Native Americans, American Indian average, national goal for 2020. In the schools we were in, we started out 67% of the kids had untreated decay, and we drove that down to 21% in 6 years. I picked that as a primary outcome because it's something that parents, teachers, and politicians and insurers can understand, and we have a bunch more data that I'm not showing you. This acute abscesses, on the y-axis percentage of kids with acute pain, swelling, or infection. By grade, mean at the beginning, 17% of kids had acute pain, swelling, infection. The next visit it was 4.5%, and then it went down to 0.5. It took us, on average, 20 minutes per kid. It cost $68 per kid per visit to do the care. We exceeded the Healthy People 2020 goals prior to 2010. We met all of the Institute of Medicine's 6 quality aims and the 3 Accountable Healthcare Act aims. So let me switch gears. This is a slide from Dr. Chu, who's sitting here. Rampant caries of a teen with beta thalassemia major and graft versus host disease, treated with silver diamine fluoride. Here are the radiographs, rampant caries. I clearly couldn't treat this in school like I did, but certainly with silver diamine fluoride, one could. So that's a high view. I have other war stories that I can share with you, which I think probably could come later. I do want to share a couple bits. We did a lot of analysis. We probably spent the last 2 years doing a deep dive into the data. And this is the probability of decay, and we dichotomized kids that didn't have decay at the beginning and kids that did. That's why they start at 1 and 0. In high-risk kids, in high-risk populations, high-risk families, high-risk schools, even if kids come in with no decay, they get decay and we can stabilize it. And these kids got same comprehensive prevention with sealants and everything else, fluoride. Each visit we saw them doing what we did, we reduced the probability of subsequent decay by 20%. And we sealed everything. So we looked at whether, this is whole teeth, y-axis percentage of kids with untreated decay. These are the whole teeth. The dashed line is just the occlusal surface, and this is the first molar. And I bring this up because a number of the programs we work with just wanted to seal first molars. And they were only seeing about half of the decay that was available to prevent from progressing. So ineffective just to seal first molars.
Is Dr. Dirks here? Come on down. Dr. Moss, you'll tell your story.
I don't have any PowerPoints, but I'm glad to be following this last session because my job is funded by the Indian Health Service. And on one of the graphs there, you can see over the 20-year period that the disease has been not changed at all. And if you really look closely, it may be a little worse. As I say, I cannot speak for the IHS. I am tribally hired by the Porch Creek Indians. So I have to be really careful what I say here because the Indian Health Service is an advisories to us. We do not have to follow what they dictate to us, but we really have to follow what they dictate to us, you know, the realities of the life. Okay? I came from, I'm a general dentist, and 90% of my time is doing general dentistry, and it has been. I, though, was trained under Paul Keyes, and I was trained in my private practice. I was with Jack Kane of Cincinnati, who independently, along with Paul Keyes, discovered the effect of fluoride on enamel back in '52. And then we pretty much were a periodontal practice. And when I retired and then came to Southern Alabama where the creeks are, I was shocked that caries was a problem, because it really wasn't a problem in our practice. Perio and ortho was our main problems and our main thrust of our practice. So it was a little bit of a surprise, very much so. So this is back in 2003. I knew we had to do something, and so I kind of took the Kais technique that I was fully using and kind of adapted it to a caries model. So initially in 2003, I started using glass cyanomer in these lesions, quickly changing to a resin modified, because the glass cyanomer in our population, the compressive strength and all those other things just was not good. And in primary teeth. And in 2004, I added fluoride varnish to every patient, every visit, because we were going to follow this, because I was required to follow it by the IHS, because I was told to cease and desist on using fluoride varnish in 2004. Because I was using it off-label. The person in charge of the IHS at the time was Dr. Playhut, who just now retired, told the area dental office, he was standing right there when I was told to cease and desist. He said, no, let him go on. I think he's onto something. And he says, then he told me, you have to follow every patient that you put on this fluoride varnish, which is not a hard thing to do in the Indian Health Service, because our records are cradle to grave. And so it's actually pretty interesting. So we started doing that, and in 2010, I added pre-treatment of using fluoride varnish with 50% providone iodine. A minute treatment of providone iodine, then followed over with the fluoride varnish. Another tribe up in Alaska then adopted this same technique. And the tribe's out of Bethel, Alaska. And I, without me knowing about it, I happened to mention to the head dentist there at a dinner, and she took it back with her. And so I was really surprised a couple years later to find this out. And in 2012, we added.
How often would you provide iodine? Was it based on the risk, or would you do it routinely every 3 months, every 6?
It's a risk-based, all right? Fluoride varnish, you really need to get 3 to 4 times a year. That's the downside of this technique. This is what we're hoping silver diamine fluoride will make this not possible, because of in the Indian population, try to get them in.
Please scoot back
sorry.
if you can for the camera. And hold the questions until the discussion group.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's a risk-based, but we use it a lot. Okay? And then from the beginning, of 2003, we stressed reduction in oral destructive habits. Reduction in oral destructive habits. It's critical. It's a critical part of all this. All right? I follow the 10-year-olds. Now our 10-year-olds are pretty much 75% caries and restoration free, which is pretty much like, as was pointed out, the white population is caries rates. And the occasional ECC that I see is a surprise. Those ECC patients are beyond dentistry. They have social problems that we cannot fix with fluoride, and we just have to deal with it. Those go to the hospital. We do 3 or 4 a year. Our tribe is small. The other tribes that have started using the silver nitrate, who have a lot of kids, I called up and they said, "Oh yeah, things are getting better." How much better? I don't really know. It was just always the problem. I said, maybe if you call the person that refers out to the pedodontist, you can get a better answer. It's just a feeling, that things are getting better. Now that we have elders with teeth, root caries is now in our population is the new ECC problem. Distal root caries, particularly root caries in general, but distal root caries is the #1 reason for extraction and endo procedures in our population. It's of course with age. It's of course with medications they're taking, and those medications can generally include crack, methamphetamines, and now heroin. So that's what we're finding. Oh, by the way, if you look through my charts, am I in the right spot?
You are now. Yes.
Okay. ECC is it should be considered a high risk for future meth mouth. It's shocking if you go through my charts. Okay, so So that's to say the number one, also too what we're finding, which is what I'm really interested in, silver diamine fluoride. In an elderly population, if you suddenly start seeing mesial and distal root caries on all teeth, maybe in 6 in a row, particularly in the lower anteriors, and in order to see them, you have to lift the gingiva up, and there they are. I can tell you this is, in my opinion, a high risk for an imminent CVA, particularly in certain populations. It's shocking. I have shocked the medical department. Like, oh, you got to get over there, you know. And of course, it's too late, you know, because it's not that the caries caused the problem. It's just, you know, it's a parallel disease. You know, it's not that you know. So we're hoping that silver diamine fluoride in the IHS in general will be able to negate the need of having 3 or 4 visits a year, because there's parts of Alaska, there's parts of the Navajo Nation, that if we can get the dentist in there once a year, we're doing good. Dr. Blayhud, who just retired, when he told me to pursue this, even though I'm not IHS and I'm tribally hired, he says, over the last 20 years, we've added all this dentists, we've opened up all these clinics, we've taken out all these teeth, we've done all these fillings, and we are the same as we were when we started. In fact, we're probably worse. So this is so, and he said to me, this is, he says, we have to do something.
Thank you. I'm really honored to have the chance to talk with you today. First, the caveat, I am not a dentist, and I'm honored to be here as a representative of the medical, public health, maternal child health profession. And I have to say, frankly, often I feel like a fish out of water when I talk to dental people. I think there's the attitude, well, you're not inside our profession. What do you have to tell us? You haven't gone through all the training we have, and that's true. And I'm always learning from you, and I've been on such a steep learning curve, trying to learn about all the details of the tooth and the microbiology and all the treatments that you do. But my perspective from the medical and public health side is also really hard, because when I talk to my colleagues in medicine and public health, they say, why are you interested in the teeth? How important can that be? So I feel like I'm trying to bridge the professions and always learning and always trying to find new ways to talk to dental professionals like you about how to talk to the medical and public health side, so we can be speaking the same language, so we can be putting all of our efforts together to try to make a healthier future for the children. So in my day job, I'm a professor at UC Berkeley, UCSF Joint Medical Program, and I teach general medicine. I also teach in the School of Public Health there. And then on the volunteer side, my nights and weekends and all my vacation time, I devote to children's oral health globally. So actually I want to start back 35 years ago, and after I graduated from college, I worked in the Peace Corps in Ecuador for 2 years in a rural area, and this is me back in the day. And I worked on child health and development, community health, and where I was working, it was a very poor village, and they had all of the health problems associated with poverty. Children had diarrheal disease, skin infections, respiratory disease, but I want you to take a look at the children's smiles. So tooth decay was not a problem back then, and I'm echoing what Rella said. Back then, people just ate straight from the farm. Fresh fruits, vegetables, milk, eggs, meat, and the children almost never had soda, sweetened beverages, junk food at all. And tooth decay wasn't a problem. This is the image that I keep in my mind every day of what children's smiles should look like. So then actually I came back to medical school, did my training, and 20 years later I returned to Latin America to start doing volunteer work. And this is what I saw. The old markets on the left sold fresh fruits and vegetables, and this is what the new markets look like now, selling a huge variety of processed junk foods and soda in huge volumes. Actually, here I took a photo of soda being sold 7 liters of soda at a time. 2 3.5-liter bottles hooked together by a sturdy plastic carrier. 7 liters for $1.29,
Oh,
and that's less than the cost of bottled water. So this is what's driving the problem. So this is what I saw. Returning to Ecuador, this is now 30 years later. This was a 5.5-year-old child. He had all of his 20 teeth decayed. Actually, we saw him the next year when he was 6.5. He had his 6-year molars. They were decayed as well. This was a rampant infection. And he is 5.5, and he weighed 27 pounds, which is the size of a 2-year-old. He was severely malnourished. He had constant mouth pain. He couldn't eat. He couldn't concentrate in school. This is the worst case scenario. And you might think, and I've actually read in the dental literature, this is a disease of poverty. But actually, his family was the most well-off family in the town. They owned the town store, and which was actually set up right next to the school. And so the children on the way to school, at recess from school, on the way home from school, they stopped by the store, so they were doing very well, selling junk food and sweetened beverages. And he had 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week access to junk food. This was driving his problem. So I started asking the people about this. I had never learned in my medical training anything about tooth decay. I was taught to examine the throat, open wide, and we look past the teeth and we just look at the back of the throat. So this was all new to me when I started seeing this. The mothers all told me my children's teeth are rotten. They complain of pain all the time. They can't eat, they can't sleep, they can't play, they can't concentrate in school. So I realized this is not just the teeth. This affects the whole nutrition, health, educational potential for children. And I started asking the dentists, and they said, well, we're bringing toothbrushing into the schools starting at age 6. And I realized that is way too late. So over the past 11 years, actually, I've had a chance to work in all of these countries. I brought groups of volunteers, including Ben Chaffee came to El Salvador with us. And we've had almost 300 volunteers working with us on this, mostly undergraduate students, but also medical students, dental students, public health students, and health professionals. And unfortunately, we find the same thing everywhere. Junk food is everywhere, and this disease is progressing everywhere. So I just want to point out a little data from our studies. At what age does this start and how does it progress? Here you can see parents giving their infants junk food. So this is just some preliminary data from a couple countries where we have convenience samples of populations of children in the communities, from El Salvador, from India here. And what you see the same as both. This is the prevalence of tooth decay by age from birth to age 6. And what you see is starting in the first year of life, just this steady increase in the prevalence of tooth decay, so that by 6 years of age, over 90% of the children have tooth decay. This is the average number of decayed, missing, and filled teeth. Actually, in this case, virtually all were untreated in these children. Again, the inexorable rise in the number of caries in these decayed teeth in these children, up to 7 or 8 at age 6. So from the pediatrician standpoint, I see that as a third to half of the children's teeth are decayed. That's a huge burden. And I just want to show you a little data from Ecuador. This brilliant young dentist from New Zealand, Bethy Turton, who's been working in Cambodia for many years. She came and worked with us in Ecuador, and she did a little graphic representation. And what she did is she took our baseline data, and she's representing a graphic representation of the teeth. You'll see the teeth sort of splayed out in visual, and as the percentage of children in the population are increasing prevalence of caries, you'll see the teeth turning pink to darker red to dark red. So you'll actually be able to see the prevalence of caries in each teeth in the population by age over time. So I'll show you this. Okay, this is 1-year-olds in our Ecuador population. We had about 700 children. So you see, even in 1-year-olds, there are some teeth here that are starting to decay. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. Okay? Shocking. So what can be done? Clearly, there's a huge burden of treatment. These children are suffering, they need treatment, but I believe that we're not going to get anywhere unless we focus on prevention, including preventing the causes, what the drivers of this, which is the nutrition transition. So here's a little graphic that I made to show this, thinking about the balance between prevention and treatment. Here are a population of children in which, say, 80% have caries. And basically when we have a disease that's so prevalent in the population, we're never going to have enough dentists to treat them. And especially in developing countries, there's so few dentists, there's no hope of ever having enough to treat. And then the dentist who might see a few of the children, occasionally you'll get a perfect result, but sometimes they can only extract the one worst tooth there. But if we get, say, community health workers or dental nurses out into the community, focusing on prevention and maybe even treatment with silver nitrate or other things, and we can reduce the burden of disease in the population, and also at the same time refer the children with the most severe disease to dental treatment, then we're actually going to have a better result on this side and a population in which we don't have such a burden of disease, and a happier tomorrow. So that's what I'm thinking. Again, the balance between prevention and treatment is very important. This is the intervention that we're doing. It's not perfect. We're trying to build on things other people have done. Prevention beginning in infancy, education on nutrition, oral health for community health workers, and they in turn educate the parents and children. Free toothbrushes and toothpaste, fluoride toothpaste for all family members, not just for the children, because the parents also have this disease. We apply fluoride varnish on children's teeth 2 to 3 times per year, and then we refer the children to dental care. So I'm particularly interested in the connection between tooth decay and malnutrition in children. So this is what we know the causes of tooth decay. It's destroying the teeth, causing mouth pain, and chronic inflammation could contribute to malnutrition. And I'm hoping that by prevention, with good oral hygiene, good diet, we can reduce tooth decay and reduce those dental problems and reduce malnutrition. So I want to share a few just preliminary results with you from Ecuador, back to Ecuador. Here's our team. We're working in an indigenous community in the Amazon jungle region of Ecuador. They seem to be particularly susceptible to caries, like our Native American population in the United States and in Canada as well. Here's some of our designs. This is community-based. We only have pre and post intervention, no control. I didn't think that that was ethical, and we didn't have the resources to do it. It's like an Indian reservation where we're working. We have children 6 months through 6 years of age. We're trying to cover all of the children and families in the region. And we're collecting data yearly by interviews with the mothers and exams of the children, both dental and height and weight for nutrition. So many study limitations. So this is just preliminary. I just want to show you the caries experience by age. So actually in Ecuador, the prevalence of caries goes up so much faster than the other countries that we saw, so that by 1 year of age, already 50% of the kids had caries. By 2 years of age, over 80% had caries. And by 3 years of age, they're over 90% do. And you can see here the rise in DMFT as well, very fast, so that by 6 years of age, DMFT of 10 to 11. But this is the blue is our 2011 cross-section, and the red is the 2013. And I want to show, but by our intervention, again, it's limited. We're not using a powerful antibacterial like silver nitrate. We've at least gotten the kids on a different trajectory, slightly slower increase in the prevalence of caries and slightly slower gain in DMFT for the children. But this is still tragic. still tragic. What I've realized is we need a much stronger antibacterial. These kids are still suffering, and the disease is rampant even with our intensive intervention. Here's the prevalence of mouth pain too. We've been able to control it somewhat with our intervention, but still we have a long way to go. And malnutrition too. This is the longitudinal sample, so a smaller proportion of children we were actually able to see 3 years in a row. And so these children here, 2 years later, they're here. These children here, 2 years later, they're here. And this is their malnutrition, height for age malnutrition or stunting, which has been a chronic problem throughout the developing world, and it's hard to reduce. But here we see that these children who started from birth have actually benefited from our intervention and have a substantial reduction in their malnutrition compared to where they were expected to be, compared to their older siblings, say, who are 2 years older. And these children, too, have a reduced malnutrition compared to their older siblings. So just in summary, I want to say we need to understand this caries pandemic in the context of the other malnutrition and obesity pandemics, all connected by the processed foods and drinks. So we shouldn't be just saying we want to help the teeth, and then we'll still have children who are consuming the junk food and the sugar-sweetened beverages, and they'll have beautiful teeth, but they're going to be obese with diabetes, kidney failure, heart disease, and all of that. We need to address the whole picture there. And so here's my message to the dental community. One, collaborate with medical and public health professionals and systems. Thinking not only of intervening through dental clinics and dentists. Of course, there are not going to be enough dentists throughout the world, but also through maternal child health systems, community health workers, nurses, preschool teachers, and publish in the medical and public health journals. When you publish in the dental journals, you're preaching to the choir. The medical and public health community needs to see this. I was just shocked. I don't know whether you all are familiar with the malnutrition literature, but the Lancet every 5 years comes out with everything that's known about child malnutrition. It's a series of articles on child malnutrition, and the recent one was put out in 2013. And they listed all the causes of child malnutrition in the developing world, thousands of references. There was not one mention of tooth decay or mouth pain contributing to malnutrition. And Habib Benzian and I wrote a letter to the editor afterwards that wasn't published, and they said that the literature is not there to show the connection between tooth decay and malnutrition, which is shocking. You all have been publishing about this. So anyway, publish in medical journals, address the oral health and the nutrition contributors of caries, focus on treatment and prevention, start from birth. Most of us go to schools to intervene. At 6 years of age, it's too late. Start from birth and prenatal, ideally. Measure the successes. Don't just look at the teeth. We've reduced DMFT. Also look at quality of life, mouth pain, nutrition status, and school attendance, and performance and cost effectiveness. So I just want to leave you with a thought from one of the Salvadoran families who participated in intervention. They said, the mother said, we used to think there was nothing we could do about our children's rotten teeth and mouth pain. It was just a fact of life here. But now, childhood doesn't have to be a time of pain and malnutrition. It can be a time of good health and happiness. This is what I believe all children in the world deserve, and I hope we can work on making that a reality. Thank you.
So I'm here at the IDR. All I've talked about the last week is microbiology of severe early childhood caries. You will be relieved to know that I'm not going to talk about microbiology today, but microphone. I'd like to point out one of my...
Close to your mouth.
Jeez, this is getting harder and harder. I am pleased to see that Jay Danzer's here. Jay was one of my mentors many years ago. So anything good that I've done, I attribute to Jay. So I'm going to talk off-label a little bit today. I am a pediatric dentist. I spent 4 years here at Boston's Children's Hospital. It's like coming back home. I was trained in hospital dentistry. So I'm going to talk about things that probably have more, I'm going to ask more questions, and I don't know the answers to. So, and that's why I'm here with a group of people who are experts in this. So these are some of my questions as pediatric dentist. We've been using silver nitrate for the last 3 years. We have an outreach program in Jamaica. I'm on the faculty. If anyone would like to lecture in February, I bet I have a lot of people who'd like to come in February who won after this winter. And we also did a program with the Indian Health Service in Pine Ridge with Stan Brock's group that I've been a member for 30-some years out of RAM, the remote area medical. We put 100 chairs into the field when we moved. So we did some silver nitrate there, and Steve was kind enough to come as well. So I have a little experience. The way you know a real silver nitrate guy or a silver person, look at their clothes. I have a stain in this shirt, which is why I'm rolling it up. I'll show it to you later. Can't see this stuff, and then you send your stuff off to laundry, and it comes back, and she puts a little circle around and says, you know, clean this shirt. Throw it away. I said, that's a custom shirt. Okay. So, this Joel Berg's not here. He sent me, I used to be a consultant for SB, German company. I moved off the line already. Jeez. He sent me this book many years ago called The Tipping Point. I think you're at the tipping point. And I think people like Peter Milgram and Duffin at the grassroots level have raised this to actually tip, because if we had this kind of seminar a couple of years ago, it was not welcome. It was not accepted. It wasn't even thought of. Indian Health Service gave me a run for my money too. Big time. Okay. Okay, so now here's some of those questions. You know the answers to this, but you know I'm just a just a pediatric dentist, and I think people should decide on what you're going to call this stuff, just because we're doctors. This was interesting. My good friend Theo Guchamanos spent a lot of time at Alabama. He's an Australian, and he did some interesting things. Now, I can't think of I didn't take PChem. You know, I took all the other chemistries.
Lucky you.
Lucky me, because that was too hard, and I wanted it. You know. So, but Theo looks at this stuff, this silver fluoride. It makes sense. Why not just go right to it? Why put all these amines and stuff on it? Just go right to the source. Well, he did some testing on this, and he found that it was actually not what people thought it was, and some 100-fold, 1,000 difference in concentration. I will tell you why that's important, but Theo, I think, was not always well received on this, but he was dead right. He's a good scientist. So there's some issues of quality control, if that's the right term. Again, I'm not the quality control guy, but I want to talk a little bit about toxicity, and this is like a very unpopular subject. And by the way, not always welcomed as well, but that's why we're here. We're going to stir up the pot a little bit. It's like taking on the Easter Bunny, you know, it's just, yeah, some things you don't talk about. You may have better opinions, and I'm asking this sincerely, in deciding what is a better way of skinning the cat, so to speak, and people are going to have their opinions as well. This is one of the pet peeves I have, and I'll give you some reasons for that. I've had discussions with people in this room about combining silver diamine fluoride, right, 44,000 parts per million, with sodium fluoride varnish, 5%, which is what, 22,000. Putting those two together, I will suggest to you that this is probably not a good idea, and I've seen it in print as being a proposal. I would love for Steve or someone to make a silver nitrate that sticks, as opposed, so, or more viscous, or something like that. It's just too watery. We ended, all our clothes have got little dark spots on it. So, hey, is that what it is? I know Jay has some opinions on this as well. Is this what silver diamine fluoride is? Okay, just a question, let's just think about it. It's a nice looking molecule, though. I can't figure out the valence on this, so, again, it was that PChem thing. You know, you've got the silver, you've got two functional groups, and then you got the fluoride. How does that work? Exactly. Peter, you know, right? You think? Okay.
I didn't do very well in PChem. I did take wheel nuts.
Okay. So again, I'm not just, I know I'm coming off as a smart ass, but and I like to do that actually, but I really don't know. And this is one of my favorite, because it's so attractive and so expensive and so difficult to bring into the country. I have to use my best friends and connections in Japan to actually bring this in a suitcase and give it to me.
Try Amazon.com.
Are you kidding?
Why?
Really?
They're big, so you should try it.
You can practice?
I don't know, but if they
Oh,
can,
okay.
if they want to sell it.
I don't think so.
They do sell dental materials.
Okay.
They
See,
do.
the work is a learning process. But it's the bullet, right? Okay, and this has got some nice features to it as well. So we've been doing some work with that as well. This is some work out of from Dr. Mays and group that I looked. Okay. We're talking about quality control and variation in products. She did some testing. So right there. Okay. I shouldn't be talking about your work, but I think it was very nicely done. So I only show good stuff. That's why I don't show my stuff. But she did show some nice variation. Some variation. It's about 10–20% in those preparations. I would have expected silver diamine fluoride to get less concentrated with time or degrade. I would have expected that, but it's actually, as you can see, it looks fairly stable, but it's higher concentration than what we think it is. This all is part of this fluoride toxicity issue that I'm going to bring up. There is some variation. I don't know if that's standard, if that's considered proper quality control, but I wasn't going to show this. You know how Duffin always likes to show Percy Howell and J.V. Black pictures, and a lot of them himself, mainly? I'm bringing my three boys in because these are the guys who won the Nobel. And you know how they won the Nobel in the Meyerhof cycle, the Krebs cycle. And I don't have Otto Warburg there. These are the German scientists from 1930. They all used fluoride, Jay, to that whole pathway. Yep. So, and what does it inhibit?
And they use 6 rats. Only 6 rats. It worked out the whole, most of what we know in the area of
Those 11 enzymes haven't changed since these guys in the 1920s. This is brilliant work. They did it with fluoride. The Germans knew fluoride inhibited enolase. They did the whole pathway. Enolase. Okay, so that's for you. Steve, dedicated to you. What handsome guys. Yeah, this is high science. This is why I had this stuff on my shirts. These are different oxidation states of sodium, silver nitrate, and you can tell maybe from the color that one is not coming out too well. All of these are effective. So what we did for our Jamaica outreach is, after spilling the solution all the time and trying to drop it in the school system in pews of churches, we decided we'd saturate the brushes first, dry them in New York, and then burn them that way, and just dip them in some water, and it worked really well for us. So that was easier than having our students spill it all the time. And in mayhem, this turned out to be a better solution. So other people may have another way of doing it, but for us it was really easy. Let me get into the topic I want to get into now. Those of us pediatric dentists, we give medications based on the weights of children. We always have done this, amoxicillin, chloral, hydrate. Most of the medications we use, we do it on a weight dose basis. So for a 5-year-old American child, which is a healthy, robust child, 20 kilograms, the PTD, that's the potential toxic dose, that's the lethal dose. It's potential because you don't know, every situation is different, is 100 milligrams. Now for a 3-year-old, we're talking 10 kilograms, a little bit more than 10 kilograms, potential lethal dose. Potential toxic would be 50 milligrams. These are figures that have been borne out. You know, Gary Whitford has done a lot of work with toxicity. And it's the same thing, 5 milligrams of fluoride per kilogram. Edwina Kidd in her book did this calculation as well. 4 mLs of sodium fluoride varnish. It's not much. Okay, you know these concentrations. Now, we can sit down and do the math. I've done this several times and check myself, but and it may not be realistic, but I'll tell you why. Maybe it seems like I'm a little bit high on the 4 drops and stuff. But oftentimes when you're doing, we found ourselves doing 4 quadrants, we couldn't do it with 1 drop, which is sometimes recommended. And we didn't make a big deal of how many, but now we were using silver nitrate. Okay, so anyway, you do all these calculations, you come up to something like 20 milligrams of fluoride if you use varnish with silver diamine fluoride. And this has been, I saw this on the WebServe as being a recommendation for the little fluoride's good, more is better. 20 milligrams in a 3-year-old is coming awful close to a very serious dose. Now, one of the problems with outreach programs is we go from school to school, and we don't necessarily follow up. We do in Jamaica because we have the entire Ministry of Health right there with us. But a lot of the programs I've done with rural area medical, there's no follow-up. You move to the next village, you go to the next place. And so we don't necessarily check on our kids afterwards. And the question is this safe? Well, I love Colgate, and the people from Colgate have given me a lot of money over the years. They're right across the street in New Jersey. You don't want to get people in New Jersey mad at you if you live in New York, because you know Chris Christie, don't mess with these guys. So, but that on outreach for the for economics, we take it. Most people use it too. Now, how many of you can squeeze out 0.4 mLs versus 0.5? I would suggest to you that in the outreach type situation, you just kind of little dab will do you, but no one's measuring it out to 0.4. Colgate tells you 0.4 ml. They tell you, they're very aware. They calculate all this stuff, and they're very good due diligence. In an outreach program, we may not be squirting this out the way we should do it. The indication, of course, off-label. By the way, the reason that this is FDA pushed back on this is because of the high fluoride content. Make no mistakes about it. That's FDA continues as terms of off-label becomes high. And the same with silver diamine fluoride. Am I saying anything wrong, Peter? Doesn't FDA have concern about fluoride in the silver diamine fluoride? 44,000 parts per million? Okay. Okay. That's a real big shake of the head.
I know the answer.
Okay. And so what happens when you swallow this? I've also been told you don't swallow it, and it's rinsed out. Well, in the outreach programs we were doing, we didn't have suction in water. We didn't have electricity. So not all of what's put into the mouth in these preparations, some of it's going to get swallowed in these kids, hydrofluoric acid. And again, I don't want to overstate this. I'm just bringing up as a controversial state because I don't know the answer to this. But how many kids, when they leave on outreach, these are malnourished kids we're treating. Malnourished. They're not 20 kilograms. They haven't eaten before they came. They come to us, they haven't eaten, they don't have a stomach full of food. And so you have to think about what they're swallowing. And, these are things that are in textbooks. So, but now, when I talk to my colleagues about fluorosis, and I was just talking to Steve Levy, spent a good amount of time with him at the meeting, people say, well, fluorosis is a little discoloration of the teeth, kind of white flecks. Both my children have fluorosis. But there's some things about fluorosis. It's really a form of hypoplasia, enamel hypoplasia. We've published quite a bit on enamel hypoplasia. It's a form of ameloblast arrest, when the ameloblasts are making enamel and odontoblasts making dentin. They become arrested, very sensitive to fluoride. And so there's definitely a clear correlation between fluoride dosing, timing, and the amount of damage. I've spent a year in China. There's areas that are endemic fluoride, that it's severe, and very, very, very severe. So, I would tell you that fluorosis may in itself be a cosmetic problem, but it's a bellwether of cell damage. And this is being borne out more and more today. I was the last diehard fluoridationist guy in the world. Every anti-fluoridation thing that came out was dismissed. It still gets dismissed. There is credible stuff now coming out. And we're doctors. We know how to handle drugs. We do it all the time. We just need to make sure our dosage are appropriate for the children that we treat. And so I won't, this is Pam DeBeston's work. It's brilliant work that she's been doing, showing the effect of fluoride on tooth development. Again, it's not so much the tooth development that is a huge concern to me and other people, but it's a bellwether. It's telling you that cells are being inhibited. We just have to be mindful that the word slather was used in one of the websites, slathering. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that much slathering. There's some other papers you can look at. I'm not going to be the guy who necessarily tells you this, but these are Harvard public health people. This is the neurotoxicity stuff has really taken, has developed some legs. And these studies are not, I dismiss them because I can't read Chinese. So I'm kidding, that was a bad joke. They're all written in China. 27 meta-analysis studies in China. By the way, if you pick up Nature and Science, our best scientific magazines, who's the first author? Chinese. Okay, so I'm not going to dismiss the Chinese studies. But a lot of people do 27 studies, meta-analysis. You really should look at this. 2004, fluoride's just been moved up to one of the toxic substances with lead, mercury, toluene, do the whole list. Again, we're doctors. This is a medication. It's effective. I'm a fluoride advocate. But let's use it effectively, and let's not, and let's be mindful that in these young, underweight children, malnourished, that we treat them with the due respect we would do with our own kids. Be mindful of toxicity. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, thank you.
2 years I returned to dental school, and I noticed that dental decay in Southeast Asia, I don't know the situation in I've been doing some mission, I'm a Christian, so I'm also doing some missionary work in Myanmar, Cambodia. And I noticed that caries is a really serious problem in Southeast Asia. And you see, I noticed that in Washington Post, you have cases reported death of the children, right? Of a child, okay, in US. And I'm not sure whether there's any cases happening in Asia, or it's just because there's no news reporting in Asia. But looking at statistics, this is from the All Health Atlas at FTI, you can see the prevalence of caries is talking about 80 to 90% of all the children in most of the country. And it's the number one reason that children cannot go to school because of fever in Philippines and it's in Taiwan. In Hong Kong, it's quite well advanced. It's still the latest census, the latest report by the Department of Health. We still have 50% of children suffer from decay. And 90% of them have not been treated. Nothing, doing nothing on them. So, so this can be it's a very serious problem in Southeast Asia. And not to mention about Cambodia, Myanmar, where the treatment is basically zero. Okay, no dentist, nothing. So what can we do? So that gives me a passion to continue my work on silver diamine fluoride studies. And this is a paper, okay, published in JDR by Rick, and I'm quite happy to find that in his literature review that they found that SDF is more effective than fluoride varnish and may be a valuable caries preventive intervention, as well the availability of a safe, effective, efficient, and equitable caries preventive agents appears to meet the criteria of both the WHO Millennium Goals and the US Institute of Medicine criteria for the 21st century medical care. I'm quite happy to know that. So this slide talking about some of the advantage of using silver diamine fluoride is very cheap, affordable, okay, minimal support required, and it's quite, cross-infection is also minimal, right? And it's a non-invasive procedure. Of course, silver diamine fluoride has some of the inherent disadvantage that is stain the tooth black, and it's an unpleasant taste. Some of the children may have some gingival and mucosal irritation, which is not common. And also, there is also, if you don't handle well, it can stain your skins and your clothes. Okay. This is a slide showing the we are using in Hong Kong the Japanese products, the Brazilian products, and the SDI in Australia is doing the also marketing a new product called River. Okay, so I asked them to, in this meeting, actually they contain also 38% silver diamine fluoride, but I've never used it. This is a new product. I think it will be available in US soon. Okay, so this is a paper as Professor Peter Milgram, okay, on the effect, okay, whether it's safe or not. And then he found that it's quite safe on the use of silver diamine fluoride, all application. There's little chance of fluorosis, okay. And this case is actually treated by me. This child is referred to me, and when the child is referred to me, the whole hospital, no one knows how to treat it. It's only 14 years old, and it suffers from very severe graft-versus-host disease. The child doesn't want to leave. It's very severe disease. And then the mother talked to me. I understand my child may die, but please give something to let him to able to eat in the last few days. Fortunately, this control and his life have been saved. And for our dental side, we put in silver diamine fluoride. It's only free application. Free application. Okay, once per week. And then the result you can see, we can change this to this. You can see in this picture, when I try to retract the mouth, you can see blood coming out because of mucositis of all sorts of problems. But after 3 weeks, you can see the gingiva. I cannot brush, okay? But you can see that, okay, I suspect there's a change in microflora. And then you can see, I think you can tell from the color, it's become very black, but very hard. So subsequently, okay, the child is happy, then I'm able to put polycarbonate crown in the front and stainless steel crown on the back. This is the study that I did, okay, on children. This is a ground section. Okay, and I found that the micro hardness actually is higher than normal. This is the normal dentine. When you do the micro hardness measurement from outside to inside, you get this graph. You can see it's very hard on the outermost 50 microns of the lesions. And this is subsequently confirmed. This is done in 2007, okay. And then my colleague May follow up another micro CT. You can see again, okay, there's increase in hardness on the outer lesions compared with an untreated lesion. So you can see the silver diamine fluoride application can really increase the hardness. This is measurement of the opacity on the outermost layer of the lesions. And this slide actually is an SEM micrograph comparing the dentine lesion. You can see this is a caries lesion before treatment. Okay, you can see the collagen is exposed, it's destroyed, whereas if you put silver diamine fluoride, you can see protection of the collagen. You can see more mineral deposit on the tooth, on the caries lesion. These are on the caries lesions. And we also measure using EDEX. You can see there's increase of the calcium ion and phosphate ion on the outermost 100 nanometers. So, what are these products? Okay, what are these crystals? When you use XRD pattern, they are the hydroxyapatite. We can see it's not calcium phosphate, it's not whatever, but we can see by XRD is a hydroxyapatite, and this is confirmed by the 10 TEM, the transmission electron microscopy. We can see the ring intact, whereas you can see destruction in the Caris lesion. So apart from the mineral content, we also look at the collagen part, the inorganic content. The organic content, you can see this is immunostaining. You can see you can have intact type 1 collagen stained by the gold particle, whereas the Caris lesion, basically the collagen structure are destroyed. So this is another study, simple. I'm sorry, there's a lot of studies, so briefly I just try to talking out briefly. So we want to test the SDF, the effect on the choledolytic enzyme. We can see silver diamine fluoride have inhibition on NMP2, 8, and 9. Okay, you can see the effect of NMP2 inhibition. It's not that good on silver nitrate. Okay, otherwise the silver nitrate works quite well on the other, but not on the NMP2. And this is another common enzyme that degrades collagen, the capsaicin. We studied on capsaicin E and capsaicin K, and in this particle you can see the fluoride is not that effective, whereas the silver is quite useful in the inhibition of this collagen degradation in dentin. So we talk about research on mineral part, also on the organic part. I want to briefly talk about the effect on the bacteria. The bacteria you can see, this is on this side. This is the bacteria, a biofilm of Strep gluten and Actinomyces. Okay. After the application, you can see this particle, okay, of silver here. When you use confocal laser microscopy, you can see all these are dead bacteria. Whereas you can see green fluorescence, that means the bacteria are alive. Okay, so you can see application of the SDF can kill the bacteria substantially. And also after the application, we put it in an artificial mouth, and you can see there's a confluent growth of bacteria, okay, of streptococci and lactobacilli with also Actinomyces. These are the common carcinogenic bacteria. But you can see with the application of silver diamine fluoride, you can see little growth on the dentin surface. So if you want to know more, this is the paper. We try to get all the paper is, you go to PubMed, and then you can, we try to make it all open access so that we can share what we found in the literature. So, so I know the time is not long, so just briefly talking about what we have been doing in Hong Kong. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chu. Just remember those slides. Dr. Black said, and incidentally, to destroy the organisms in it.
Some of these causative substances. You've also talked about methamphetamines in some of these situations, and that gets very difficult. But honestly, I do think that as people who work in dental research and in dentistry, I think we honestly need to be more proactive. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of do the last 10 years or so in risk analysis, and what we find as we approach people here in this country is that people do not talk honestly about their habits and their diets. They can't really deny visible biofilm on their teeth, but when we get into dietary analysis, they will look you right in the eye, very fine, good, upstanding people, and lie to you. And this definitely throws off your risk analysis. What Brad and I have found is that in our rich population, we actually have dental caries progressing right under our surveillance. We have been particularly interested in pit and fissure caries because this type of a lesion has been controversial. Controversial in that should we be excavating or should we be trying to arrest and remineralize these lesions? And so we began to seek out these types of lesions and see if we could understand what was really going on. And I'd like to tell you a few of the things that we found. Now, these are in vivo cases. We do not work in vitro. We do not work with artificial caries models in labs. We work with people. We're very fortunate to be able to do that in our kind of a situation and get past the various hurdles of legalities and so on. What we have found is that these lesions that appear to be non-progressing and very small are progressing, but they are progressing pulpily. And so therefore, on the surface, you cannot tell that they are progressing. They do not show on a radiograph. We have found one caries detection instrument that is actually a fairly, well, it's a laser. This would be the Canary system that is very able to look specifically at a very specific area. And we can see that it does find these areas perhaps better than others, but on the other hand, you can never find the same area twice. Repositioning it is a very difficult problem. So to be able to actually watch these lesions over time is very difficult. I don't know how many of you have ever worked with trying to find the exact same position twice. I know many of you have tried to do that with radiographs and monitoring bone height in periodontal patients and even trying to look at caries over time. And so I have this real concern that we're allowing the cause to go on. And I just throw that out to us, whether it's silver diamine or whether it's silver nitrate or whether it's fluoride or whether it's a dozen other things. We have found that the types of products that are available in the U.S. for arrest and remineralization, if you release them into use in a real life situation, that they honestly are not any better than 1,000 parts per million dentifrice. And this is what the information that we brought to this meeting this year was a study with 328 kids. We were able to show a difference with Prevident 5000, either booster or plus, a 5,000 parts per million dentifrice, with releasing the kids to use it at home. But such things as amorphous calcium phosphate, xylitol, ozone gas, some of these other things, fluoride varnish, we were not able, when these products were actually released and used as they're used clinically, our part was simply to monitor what happened in these kids from before they were banded all the way through orthodontic treatment. The treatment was then discontinued when they were debanded, and we continued to follow them for a year. We call this accelerated natural demineralization. I'm sure all of you are aware of what goes on in orthodontics. It's a problem with oral hygiene, but it's also a problem with diet. And so with this, I'm going to end my comments, and I hope that this extremely prestigious group will not look just at treatment. You're criticizing fillings, and yet I stand before you with 50-year-old fillings in every posterior tooth that did stop what was going on, but the difference is I don't eat added sugar. I simply don't eat it. And I brush my teeth. So the restorations they have helped. I mean, let's be fair about it. And we're also talking about access to care. I look at what we have done in working with patients, and I see that we have offered access where people are afraid of pain or people are independable. They do have ways to come. They have ways to make it to the movies and to do other things. They do have transportation if they want it. So there is access, but they don't take advantage of it. And so these are some other things that I feel that to be fair, we need to address, because you people sitting in this room have influence. And so I leave you with those comments.
We have two
Thank you for
actually
the opportunity.
representatives of large dental practices who are dealing with the problem in the United States. And we're going to have someone from Willamette.
You're not an Oregonian. Okay.
I'm not an Oregonian.
It's the Willamette River.
Who's going to say whatever. You are
Dr. Lyle.
Okay, why don't you take it from there? Will you respond?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Lyle McClellan. I'm a official title is Director of Doctor Development, which really doesn't mean what it says, but I work for Willamette Dental. We're a large dental practice that has 50 offices and about 140 general dentists and specialists spread through 3 states, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And we have a vested interest in getting caries under control. And I'd just like to say that is, the more I learn about caries, the more I learn how complex of a problem it really is. And I think that whenever we have a complex problem, we need to attack it with complex solutions. It's not just a simple solution all the time. So all of these things, diet, oral hygiene, the right kinds of antibacterial agents, I think all of these feed into curing the disease. And I think that we need to look at all of them and use all of them. It's not that we can just find one. And I think that's where in the history maybe we've gone wrong, is fluoride came along, we felt like it was the solution to this complex problem, and it didn't do what it promised, and now we're finding that we need more solutions to this complex problem. We, as a business, have kind of made a business decision to use silver nitrate in conjunction with our fluoride treatments, especially on our kids and our geriatric population, so that they can, so that we can just get the disease under control. And from a business standpoint, it makes a lot of sense, because if we get the disease under control and we make them healthy, that's where we make money. And if we can make people healthy and make money, that's a great place to be for both the patient and our business. We developed a protocol with Dr. Duffin, and our protocol is that we use 50% silver nitrate solution, followed by the fluoride varnish, and we do 3 applications, and then we follow that a week later. There's a week between each one, ideally, and then following the last week, we do a glass ionomer restoration, and that one is kind of up to the choice of the doctor whether they're using the Fuji 9 or the Fuji 2, whatever, as long as it's glass ionomer is what we're suggesting. And sometimes when you get a difficult child to work with, sometimes the Fuji 2 is the only way to go. And we developed a training program. We have a pretty good training department, and it's pretty robust. And what we did is we actually did a train the trainer model, and we had a webinar and brought in all of our managing dentists. Each office each of the 50 offices has a managing dentist. And so the managing dentists from our offices in the area that we're piloting this or actually implementing at this point, we trained them on how to do this and also trained them on how to train. They actually took extracted teeth, trained auxiliaries as well as dentists. In Oregon, the dentists have to place the silver nitrate, but we wanted to make this a four-handed dental project, so we wanted to make sure that whoever's setting up the silver nitrate is doing it in ways that they're not getting it all over their clothes, and also who's tearing it down is also not getting it all over their clothes. So we've trained the whole dental team through this process, with the managing dentist being the lead in that, using the materials that we've come up with. And we had them use extracted teeth, we had them view videos that we took at Dr. Duffin's office, and it's been a very successful training program. That program actually ended on the 19th of January, and we started doing the actual work. And to the end of February, we've done 106 applications. We had to actually develop a code so that we could track this. And I don't have any information at this point on whether kids have been coming back for 3 applications or whether they were 1 and lost to follow-up. We'll get that information as we go along, but the initial data is that we've been able to do it, and potentially 30 some odd kids have benefited from it if you divide it by the 3 applications. That's a good result, and we're looking forward.
Almost. We're almost on schedule. Thank you.
That mean I'm supposed to hurry up?
No. You do it. It's all evening now, just the way it's supposed to be.
I want to thank Steve and his crew for inviting me. I'd never been to Boston before. My wife had the opportunity to come with me, and so, oh, gotta stand right here on this spot. All right, there we go. Anyway, I've never been to Boston, Mass before, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. We scheduled a couple extra days so we could see a little history, and so I feel a little strange. It's the one that says Boston, Massachusetts, in there someplace, if you can find it.
I got it.
There you go.
Proud of me.
Go to the next slide for me.
Here's the clicker for you.
Oh, all right. How's it work?
You press the button.
A lot of you guys know what the 100th monkey principle is. Does anybody know what the 100th monkey principle is? When information reaches critical mass, everybody knows. So on my desk back there is a smartphone. Does anybody not know what a smartphone is? Does anybody not own a smartphone? Does anybody in the world not know what a smartphone is? Even the folks we were looking at before. Why is it that everybody knows what a smartphone is? Because when information reaches critical mass, everybody knows. What I spend my time doing anymore is not talking to dentists. I'm a dentist. I practice in a third world country called rural Oregon. And this is what I see lots of. My company, Advantage Dental, similar to Willamette Dental, only Willamette Dental, I'm 3 times bigger than Willamette Dental. I'm in all 36 counties. I contract with all of Oregon's version of an accountable care organization called a coordinated care organization, and I take care of 320,000 rural Oregonians' Medicaid teeth in my plan. I have 34 of my own clinics, 300 owner dentists. We're a large IPA. We have 400 employees, and we have telemedicine, a wide area network. We do electronic health records, and we do all kinds of stuff. And what I started out was a little company trying to figure out how we could take care of cavities in rural Oregon and organize ourselves in a way where we could get enough money together so we could do it in a way other than chasing widgets. The bigger the widget, the more we got paid. It's transferred from mother to child usually, or mother to primary caregiver to child. And this is a 3-year-old. When I was a young dentist, I took lots of slides, and these are all my slides that I took. Somebody sitting in the chair, and I just went through them. And this is a 3-year-old, and here's a 12-year-old, there's a lower teeth, and there's a 12-year-old, and there's a 20-some-year-old, and the only difference is they added meth to it, so they sped it up by adding meth. The typical meth is Mountain Dew goes through the upper teeth, the acid goes through the teeth, dissolves your ganglia, enamel falls off, and it goes to the lower teeth. Where's the... Oops, now I forgot. Anyway, it goes to the lower, they lose the lower backbone, it goes across the tongue to the lower backbone. You guys all know about that. In my community, though, we had the biggest meth dealer in Oregon was from my community, it was my patient. And so then you have this, you know, a little later, and then you have this. And then I had the opportunity to review a lot of slides and X-rays, and this is the solution to this is this, and this, and this, and these teeth are getting ready to be extracted. And so I'm in this rural community, and I see these things, and I'm supposed to, and I'm restoring as fast as I can possibly restore, and I get to do this, and then I get to take them out, and so I thought there had to be a better solution. So after 20 years of doing this, in this third world rural called Myrtle Creek, Oregon, where there was lots of loggers and lots of poverty and lots of poor people, and what we really had was lots of broken families and lots of people being raised, lots of kids not being raised very well, and lots of poor nutrition and lots of stores that had the same stuff that the nice lady put in there that they have in Ecuador in our community. And I thought we needed a new paradigm, because the restorative paradigm does not work in the presence of a disease that's out of control, in a population that doesn't have the behaviors to use the system we're using, nor the resources to use it. Even if the government helps them some, we need a different paradigm. This is, some of you might have read the book called The Business of Discovering the Future by Joel Arthur Barker. Paradigm is, you know what a paradigm is. A new paradigm is needed to solve the oral problem for those whose dental infections are out of control, and thus ineffective to solve the problem with the replacement. I call it the replacement. So maybe we ought to look at it different. And that's what I just got here. Maybe we ought to look at this in a different way. And maybe we ought to think about assessing risk. And maybe if we did, maybe we could end up with this. So in Oregon, we're doing the grand triple aim. And better health, better care, and I call it a better cost. And so we have this grand experiment, Accountable Care Organization going on, including oral health. So you have physical health, oral health, and behavioral health all in the same organization working together to see if we can't make a difference. Don Berwick, as a lot of you know, who started this concept, says the remaining barriers to integrated care are not technical, they're political. We have the science we need to solve this problem. You've heard a lot of it here today. The problem with it is we have a political system in our communities such that it doesn't happen. And one of the things I spend a lot of my time doing is sitting with the folks in Oregon having debates over how do we do this different. Many years ago, Bob Barkley, who a lot of you, or if you're old enough, old as me, you remember, aid by its nature will flow towards the problems rather than towards opportunities. It will go where the needs are greatest rather than where the results are. It will therefore tend to create or at least perpetuate dependence. Reliance on aid also encourages division of scarce resources to the wrong project with minimal whose impact is minimal. Now, I'm a big proponent. In fact, I'm the guy that was at the same meeting that Steve was when we thought we were looking for other solutions. And so a big deal for me is having something where I can arrest the cavity without having to fill it. Because the cavity is, I look at the cavity as the symptom of an infectious disease. And so when I circle back to the 100th monkey principle, when I go to the community, what I hear the community saying is that we just need more dentists that can fix our teeth. And as long as we talk about we just go to the dentist and fix our teeth, the information's never going to get there that this is an infectious disease, and we have to approach it in a different way that has a really huge nutritional overtone component. Because the lady showed that when they had the appropriate nutrition, they didn't have any cavities. And so As long as we talk about this as the solution is to having more dentists or junior dentists or fixing teeth, the information will get there and will never solve this problem. We all need to, in our communities, talk about this as an infectious disease. It's transferred from primary care to child, and when we start doing that, we'll start looking, when the information gets to the point that everybody in our community knows that, we'll have different solutions, my belief. Anyway, my goal is, as a business guy, is to come up with systems. And what I tried to do is say, okay, I said, okay, if this is an infectious disease transferred from mother to child, where should we start? So one of the things we started is where do the people show up? Because they don't show up in our factory until they have problems bigger than, the bigger the problem, the more we get paid. So we sit around in our little factories waiting for people to show up. The biggest factory in our community is the hospital. Biggest little factory is the hospital. Bigger the problem, the place to show up. And so where do the people show up? Because they don't show up in our office until they have a problem. So, and if we knew where they showed up, and we sent somebody out there to look in their mouth, and we saw what the issues were, who would go look? What science would we use at that point? And what would be the appropriate thing to do? And so we started looking at, as a company, if our goal is to get, I want kids, if the goal is a cavity is a failed outcome and a filling is a failed outcome, and we want healthy kids and healthy adults, and I'd really like to have kids graduate from high school with no decay, if that was my end goal, or 3-year-olds with no decay, or 6 years with no decay, whatever we picked out to do. If that was my goal, what would I do? Where would I go? What science would I use? And who would I have do it? And that's the approach that we're taking in our company. Well, as you know, there's a lot of barriers to that because, you know, the hygienist has a license to do this, the dentist has a license to do this. We have all of those issues that we have to deal with. And so you have to get engaged politically. And so whatever community you're in, you got to figure out what the political system is, and you have to have some system to get involved with it. And so I know a lot more about politics than I ever wanted to, but the rules of politics are, it's all personal and local. What do you want when you're willing to give up to get it, and never surprise your friends or your enemies? And so spend a lot of time, have a full-time lobbyist and all the stuff you have to do. So what I'm trying to do is organizing my resources in a way that I can get the end goal, which is to have healthy kids with no cavities in their mouth. Now I'm just doing the oral health piece. When you're going to do the nutritional piece and the behavioral health piece, it's just, but I put together this timeline. This is conception to death. This is rest in peace. Conception to death. And basically all it is where do people show up? What science would we use? Who would we send out there? What would we do? And every age. And so where do kids show up? Where do pregnant women show up? In Medicaid, show up when? So we ought to go down to WIC and look in their mouth and do 3 things: prevention, risk assessment, and evaluation. Next, where do they show up next? Show up at the pediatrician's office. How many well-being visits do you get in the first 3 years of your life? 12. How many do we need to be able to intervene in a way, and do a risk assessment to see who's at risk and what intervention would we do, and if we did that, who should do it? And where's the next place they show up in my town? Early Head Start. So somebody ought to go down there and look in their mouth and see what's going on. And if they have a brown lesion, which is a symptom of an infection, maybe somebody ought to intervene with the infection rather than with a drill. And so then where's the next place they show up? They show up at Head Start. The next place, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, all the way through. So wherever they show up, you gotta look. Well, where do the adults show up? Well, those of us that are independent, who knows? Who knows where we show up? We usually show up in the dentist because we know how, we can afford it, we have the resources, we have the discipline, and so we go to the dentist. But where do the other adults show up? Well, the mental health, where do the mental health folks show up? People who are disabled, severely disabled, where do they show up? So what we do is we send people like Charity out there, who's an expanded function hygienist, round them all up, put all the charts in one place, get John Forcello to come down and help us, and look in the mouth, and let's manage those charts someplace else. So where do the people institutionalized show up? So we ought to go look and see. Do a risk assessment. Those that really look in their mouth. Are there interventions? We're giving a lot of xylitol to seniors, giving out a lot of xylitol tablets to people institutionalized. Because what we found is it cuts down the plaque and it cuts down the decay. And to give it to them like medicine. So it's just a little bit of what we do, and we're trying to organize ourselves in a different way. And the way we can do it, the reason we can do it is because we get a block of money called global budgeting. You guys know one of the pieces of the global, of the triple aim is global budgeting. We get a block of money to allocate in a way that makes sense. Other thing I do, Dr. Milgram stepped out, but I hire folks like him to come and help me spend 8 years trying to get silver fluoride approved in the United States. And all the things you learn, and we did. Last August, I was the guy that put the money up, Dr. Milgram put up the science, and a lot of the rest of you folks helped out, and we finally got it approved, so the silver diamine fluoride could get approved. It's so ridiculous because silver nitrate and varnish seems to work. But our board of dentistry says, well, there's really no science on that one, so we ought to be using silver fluoride. If we had silver fluoride, we would let you use that. It's ridiculous. 8 years to go through bureaucracy to get something approved that does as much good. And all it is an antimicrobial. When you know an antimicrobial, when you sterilize a cavity, you add some fluoride and you add some calcium apatite from the saliva, you get remineralization. I learned that from you folks. The folks in China, I learned that from them. So it's just a matter of how do you put a system together, how do you get the financing for it, what do you want to accomplish, and then every day it's a problem to solve, and so every day you got to solve a problem. And the problem with it is it's a very complex system, and I saw some of that today. Where we, the politics get in the way, we position ourselves, we justify what we do, all kinds of things we do. That's the American way. You know that there are a lot of things we can do that allow us to have healthy kids that we could work on. So anyway, that's what we do in Oregon. It's just a way, one old dentist way of trying to approach the same problem we're all looking at. Thank you.
Interested about so let me start with something else. We should think about upgrade. So upgrade, usually if we have iPhones, we should upgrade the system. Also from iOS 7 to iOS 8 to iOS 10, Android, also ice cream to something like this. So we should upgrade our systems. You can't drive this car now in our road. So we should also change this. Also, this is during Plaque's era. We start this by finger, by beetle, by electrical, the primitive things. Now we have the chemomechanical, the lasers, ozone, something like this. So we should shift our looking or our perspective. So I have a very nice, this is a dental caries, and all of us know about the dental caries. It's a multifactorial disease. Bacteria is responsible, host also is responsible, diet and time. We can, if we don't apply the 3 circles together, without time, we will not have a caries. So all of this should be add together and interact, and we will have the dental caries at the middle. So the etiology, I will not go for this etiology. We have a pellicle, and the pellicle become infected, and so until we reach the pH. The lactobacillus produce some lactic acid and reduce the pH below 5.5, and this is a critical point. So during this, we classify the caries according to Plaque, then mountain stage, mountain hume, which is site and stage, and which was more descriptive. And now we are shifting to ICDS system. So ICDS system now is based in something like evidence-based. It's not a descriptive like mouth and hume. I will not go for Plaque because already Plaque is, we know every bit. So now site and stage, 3 sites, 5 stage, and at this time we are thinking, we are moving from the Plaque era to something is called minimally invasive dentistry. So we have stage number 0, which is incipient lesion, minimal lesion. So we are moving our mind, but it's more descriptive. So shifting to the ICDS system, which is International Caries Detection and Assessment. So it is, we try to combine the clinical and the epidemiological studies together. We would like to find something standard between them. So this is the ICDS system. I will not, and this is how developed from ICDS 1 to ICDS 2 now. And this is a system. Usually ICDS system I respect because it's based in something like histological. So I can say it's a sort of an evidence-based. So based on the ICDS system and the new system, we have two caries treatment models. The first one, the medical model, which is dependent on remineralization, topical fluoride application, Pitts and Fisher sealants when it is non-invasive. Sometimes it's moved to the surgical model, which is now dependent on the minimal invasive. So my father is a professor in the university in geology, and he teach me something in geology. They told that the present is the key, the past is the key of the present. This is something rule in the geology. So we should go a little bit to the past. The past here is from Webb concept to remove the caries. So it is 1883. Then we are moving a little bit to blacks, and we respect black. And I have the chance in the University of Hong Kong to read.
Oh, naughty.
Okay.
Sorry.
I have a chance to read the original text of Black in 1936. And this is the page. And this, what I say, I will read it. In case should any decay and soft material be left, it is better to expose the pulp of the tooth than to leave it covered only with softened dentine. So this is what Black say from his text. So I'm respecting Black because Black has only amalgam. This is the only option for him. And even he don't have minimally invasive caries removal agents. So moving to this concept, as they called it, extension for prevention. Then moving to the other in 1980s, they follow the same. In the middle of 18th century or 19th, also they have the same concept like Black. Until also we have extension for retention. This is because also they have amalgam. Until this gentleman is come in 1980. So this is Fusiyama, and he put the milestone of minimally invasive dentistry. So this gentleman classified the caries into two layers. The first is the outermost layer, which is called caries infected dentine. And he based his classification on histology, and this is the base of ICDS system. The other one is caries affected dentine. And Fusiyama principle, which he is putting the caries removal dyes to leave the caries affected dentine and remove the caries infected dentine. So this is a milestone. Until this minimally invasive, until the three gentlemen is coming. This is Watson, this is, I'm not sure, he is from King's College, and this is Edwina Kent. So all of them are working in this, and they introduced the partial caries removal concept in 2000. This is approved from the FDI, I think it's presented in FDI, and before of it they introduced the ART technique, traumatic restorative technique. So it is concept that if I have a high risk area, and if I remove the caries, even if it is caries infected dentine and I will expose the bulb, it's better to leave it. And they promote it as seal is the deal. So sealing the cavity and leaving the bacteria, cutting the nutrition toward the bacteria is much better than exposing the bulb. It is completely opposite from Black's principle, the first principle. So we are going to, I will leave the caries, but I can't leave without any management. So I can recommend either using three of these techniques. Using silver diamine fluoride, and now they have another thing to reduce the problem of the staining, using potassium iodide on top of it, using chemicals like cavity cleanser like chlorhexidine, and also we have a benefit that increase or decrease the degradation of the bonding. The last thing which I'm based, it is an evidence based from one of my studies, using resin modified glass ionomer adhesive, not a resin modified glass ionomer material, restorative material, it's an adhesive. And I will show you some of my results. This is published in Australian Dental Journal last April. This is the caries affected dentine, and this is the dentine, the sound dentine from the same tooth. I'm using usually chemomechanical caries removal because chemomechanical caries removal ensure that we leave the caries affected dentine. One of the most conservative was to remove caries. You can see here, this is the dentine, and this is, we apply an acid, then sodium hypochlorite after. So it is an acid-base resistant. This area is acid-base resistant. And Tagami, in his work, they call this a sober dentin. The same tooth, this is the sound area. Compare, please, the layer of acid-base resistant in the caries affected dentin and the sound dentin. So it is not comparable. I will show you in large scale. This is something is called montage. And we take the scan electron microscopy. You can see the thickness of this area. This is the acid-base resistant area. And compare the sound. When you go through this area and this area, the sound dentin is there. So imagine this is acid-base resistant. So this makes me changing my mind. Is it a fluoride working here, or it is the acid-base resistant area, or the acid-base resistant layer beneath the glass ionomer cement? So we know that glass ionomer have a problem. Caries is depend on the pH, the dropping of the pH. So if I have a layer which is acid-base resistant beneath the glass ionomer, it can resist the recurrence of the bacteria. So this can change my mind. And also we test some mechanical testing for this layer. It is, I'm not saying that it will reach the sound dentin, but it be between the soft dentin and the sound dentin. So moving to the other option, which we are talking here about, which I present in the IEDR, using is silver diamine fluoride. Silver diamine fluoride can solve this problem also. So silver diamine fluoride, I use the Rivastar. This is when I use the silver diamine fluoride itself. This is my finger. It's stained. So Knight from Australia, he developed a very nice technique. He put a potassium iodide on top of the silver diamine fluoride and make a precipitate on top of it. Something like, please, we can move this? Yes, please, sorry. So this is the application. This is the tooth structure. We apply the layer of silver diamine fluoride at the beginning. It's something like a varnish or bonding agent. Then we make a slight dryness. Then we, on top of it, put the potassium iodide. And if the color is fine, you will find the white precipitate. So maybe it's not, but here you can say some white precipitate. Then we remove the excess. So this is Knight application. So this is what I present in IEDR. This solved me a great problem. In 2013, I presented in Seattle this study, and it's published in Journal of Endodontics, about the viability of intratubular bacteria after chemomechanical caries removal. I use, it's not my methodology, I use the methodology from endodontic. I just shifted a little bit about Streptococcus mutans instead of E. faecalis, and try to introduce the bugs or the Streptococcus mutans inside the dentinal tubules. And this is the conofocal microscopy images. You can see this is the positive control and this is the negative control. Negative control, I have no infection. So there is no fluorescence under conofocal microscopy. Here, when I try to introduce the bacteria inside the dentinal tubules, this is my positive control, I have no treatment. Then this is the sodium hypochlorite, the solution, and this is one of my group, which is CarySolve. If you can see here, there is no significant difference between the positive control and the CarySolve. Publicly, I have something like this. So I'm not presenting this data for this. I present that I have a problem in this group, which is a CarySolve. How I can solve it? I try to solve it using silver diamine fluoride. This is the same study. I'm repeat it again, but at this time I add Rivastar, which is silver diamine fluoride. You can see here the same result, the positive control and the CarySolve. It is almost the same. But when I add the Rivastar, you can see the amount of killed bacteria. This is the Rivastar itself. It's killed around 60% of the bacteria. Here, the publicly, it is also when I add it, increase or enhance its effect. You can say when I add the Rivastar, it's much better than add the chlorhexidine. This is the chlorhexidine itself. Even I add the chlorhexidine and Rivastar. Yes.
So when you say you add Rivastar, are you saying use the silver diamine fluoride plus potassium iodide?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Sequence.
Yes.
Did you ever do this study with only the silver diamine fluoride and no potassium iodide?
Yeah, because I use the system, it is now a commercially available system, so the commercial, I follow the instruction for them. So the instruction they put the silver diamine fluoride and on top of it with the potassium iodide. And I will report something also at the end. So this is
all the instructions.
Yes.
I don't very often.
I will tell. So this is a published study. It is now online. I think this maybe 2 weeks before the IEDR, and this is what you can see the details in it. But I have a problem, and when we add the potassium iodide, the adhesion is a problem, because Knight claimed that in 2006 that there is no problem the adhesion of GIC, but I told you it is a problem. There is a problem, and we will present in London. I think Professor Barrow from the University of Melbourne will present this very soon about this. There's a problem there in the adhesion, and I think the adhesion, even I think the companies start to change their instruction. Just at the end of my study, I am exposed to something is called chemomechanical curves removal. I just will have this slide about the chemomechanical curves removal methodology. This is the curves. I apply gel, just leave for 30 seconds. It becomes turbid. Then I wash, apply second time, it's become turbid. Until it failed to become turbid, this is my endpoint. So this methodology is very conservative to the curves affected dentin, and this I presented a lot before, and we have also a study on it in Australian Dental Journal, and we finally into this one. And finally, there are two types of caries removal methods. We don't apply any terpene or something like this. The first one, sodium hypochlorite based, is introduced 1976. The other one is enzyme based, which is introduced in 2003. And this is material. This is, I think most of you are familiar with this. This is the Caridex, which is sodium hypochlorite base, introduced 1984. Then we move into Carisol. Both of them are sodium hypochlorite base. And finally, we get something from papaya tree, and this is a papain, which is called papicari. I'm not, because this is the only product. I think 3M is preparing something about Biosol or something like this, but it's not commercially available. Thank you for your attention. And I'm waiting if any question I can answer. Thank you.
Okay. Let's put it together. Let's put it together. Come on, big guy.
We are rebelling, and we deserve freedom from taxation from a king that doesn't care about us. Let's do it. And we're in the home of Percy Howell, looking for the cure for caries, and we're throwing tea into the harbor to reach that goal.
Where'd the tea come from? Okay.
To freedom.
British tea.
Thanks, Jeff.